Good afternoon. My name's Christian Aguiar. I am the academic director of the college prep program, and I'm going to be speaking with you today about a really important topic: how to take better notes. So if you're anything like I was when I was at the end of my high school career and when I was starting college, you feel like you've got note taking down. I certainly thought so. I did well in my classes. I got A's and B's. And it seemed like I was doing what I needed to do when I took notes. In this module, we're looking at some misconceptions about note taking, and we're going to try to help you develop some strategies for note taking that might improve your abilities. In this video, I'm going to look at some recent research on note taking and specifically talk about whether you should take notes by hand or via a laptop, tablet, or other device. So I'm hoping at the end of this video and at the end of this seminar module, you'll be able to improve your note-taking skills a bit. And this is important because college students take a lot of notes. So one study suggests 95% of college students take notes during a lecture. And that seems like common sense, right? If you aren't taking notes during a lecture, what exactly are you doing? The other 5%, probably asleep. It's important to note, though, all notes aren't equal. So back in 2014, Mueller and Oppenheimer put together a really well-known study where they looked at students, participants who took notes by hand and those who took notes on a laptop. And what they found was that handwritten notes were better in two important ways. So first, the act of writing the notes out by hand helps with the encoding function of notes. So in the science of note-taking, encoding refers to your ability to cognitively process the information, to basically code it. So what their research suggested is that the process of taking notes by hand, because it prevents you from transcribing the information, from just copying things down word for word, encourages better cognitive mapping. So some examples they give, when folks are taking notes by hand, they're more likely to, say, use mind maps. They're more likely to draw pictures, but also they're more likely to prioritize information. So if you're watching this right now and you're trying to take down every word I say, you're probably failing unless you have like some sort of cyborg arm and you can write at the same speed at which I talk. Because of that, your brain's going to only write down, your brain's going to tell you to write down just the most important information. And that process, thinking through that, categorizing, narrowing information down is really important to your learning. Second benefit, the storage function. So when you think about the storage function, we're talking about just memory. So not categorizing things, but just holding stuff in your mind. So Mueller and Oppenheimer, in their research, found that students taking notes by hand performed better on recall tests, tests where they were required to recall information. And that suggests writing notes by hand improves the storage function. In the same study, if we jump back, they found that students who took notes by hand also did better and did particularly better on tests that required them to apply more complex thought patterns. So when they were asking students to really think through information and apply that knowledge, not just regurgitate it, students who'd taken notes by hand did better. This is likely because they had to cognitively map and cognitively take on that information during the note-taking process. So what does this tell us? Don't use laptops. Simple as that. That's the story I would have told you if I was giving you this presentation 2 years ago. In the meantime, though, some other scholars, Moorhead and colleagues, attempted to replicate the results that Mueller and Oppenheimer reported. So you probably know in science, we always want to be able to replicate results. So if I complete a study and I find certain results, my colleague should be able to replicate the same study with new participants and get the same results. If that happens, we can be pretty confident in the results. If that doesn't happen, though, we're a little unsure. So when Moorhead and colleagues attempted to replicate these results from 2014, things turned out a little different. So what they found was that while the general trend seemed to be the same, it often was still the case that folks taking notes by hand did better on tests. It wasn't always the case. And they introduced an additional variable. They looked at students taking notes on e-writers. So those would be the little tablet-like devices where you're actually taking notes by hand using a stylus that you can then upload into the cloud. And what they found was that those students often did as well or better than the students who were taking notes by hand. But then depending on how they played around with the variables and depending on whether they were conducting the test immediately after folks took the notes or whether they had time to study, the results were different. They couldn't reproduce the results. And so what that suggests to us is that we can't say for certain that laptops aren't an effective note-taking tool. But there are a few things we can say. We can say that laptops do encourage you to take verbatim notes. And we do know that taking verbatim notes, trying to transcribe what someone is saying, is less effective for learning than processing notes, narrowing them down, categorizing them. So, if you'd like to take notes on your laptop or on a tablet, know that the impulse is going to be to take more verbatim notes. And the research is consistent there. It's about double the rate of verbatim note-taking when compared with those who are writing it down by hand. But you may be able to keep this in mind, be mindful of that impulse, and control yourself when you're taking notes. So if you're going to take notes with your laptop because you want an organized file, because you use your laptop for everything, so why not have your notes on there? Just make sure that you monitor yourself. Make sure that if you find yourself trying to write everything down, you pause and say, that's not a good idea. Second thing, if you really like taking notes by hand, but you also want a digital copy, you might want to get one of those e-writers. That could be helpful. Third thing, handwritten notes may still be the best way. We're just not sure. So if you're already taking notes by hand, that's probably a good thing. So thank you for listening to me today, for joining me in this brief breakdown of the research. After this video, we're going to ask you to look at 3 different note-taking methods and apply one that you don't already use. So we want you to kind of experiment, try something new, try something you wouldn't normally do, and see what your results are. Thank you.